everyone. I'm Matt Knickerbocker, and this is Bethel Today. My guest this evening is Mr. Jason Bartlett, State Representative for Bethel, Danbury, and Reading, or parts thereof. Mr. Bartlett has just completed his first session, legislative session in Hartford as our state representative for this area. And we thought we'd get Mr. Bartlett on this evening to talk a little bit about the session and what was accomplished. And I have to tell you, you have been extraordinarily busy, much more so than most people that we've really known personally that have gone to Hartford and worked on behalf of us. So congratulations on your first session. I think it was very successful.
Well, thank you. You know, I don't think I was the typical freshman.
It didn't look like it to me, I got to tell you that.
This year. But I had, you know, some experience in politics over the years and knew a bunch of the players, and so they gave me some leeway in terms of being able to voice my opinion and advocate on behalf of the 2nd District. And, you know, I tried to be very active on the committees. I was on education, I was on human services, and I was on finance, revenue, and bonding. And hopefully I leveraged, and I think I did, leveraged each committee to try to benefit in some way folks in the district, our constituents, and try to bring some bacon back, some money back to the district, and really advocate for folks that wrote me, and folks that I talked to at the grocery store, and folks that I made pledges to during the campaign. So I was trying to be as active as I possibly could, and I think that in the end of the day, we got some good results for Bethel.
Those are pretty plum assignments for your first time in office, isn't it? Isn't that kind of unusual? Yeah,
that was the first thing that made me really happy. I remember, I think I was one of the grocery stores, and the Speaker of the House called me up and said, you know, basically I got the 3 committees that I had asked for. And,
which are really the 3 most powerful committees that are in
Well, they're
Hartford.
very powerful. There's a lot of bills that come through each committee. And so on education, you know, we had the Bethel High School issue during the campaign, and I had said that I would make sure that I went up to Hartford and advocated, made sure that, you know, that the high school money went through in an efficient way. And I feel I did that. I attended the construction subcommittee, saw the high school in there, made sure that ushered it through education. I also happened to sit on finance, so I made sure it was ushered through the finance committee, and then on the floor the last day of the session, actually, we passed that bill. So on that one, on education funding, we got the runs on education, and I actually voted initially on education against the ECS change in formula. Because I didn't feel that the district was getting enough money. And I was actually one of the representatives that kind of started a little bit of revolt in the caucus. Due to the fact,
causing trouble already?
Yeah, I caused a little bit of trouble, but it was for the constituents to make sure that we got our adequate share. So I voted against it in committee. The formula was changed to make it better for districts that are more conservative, you know, across the state, specifically, you know, some of the Republican districts that Democrats are now representing, which is the 2nd District. And so we got a little bit more money for Bethel and for the 2 other towns. And, you know, we did really well. So I tried to use my position on each committee for the betterment, you know, of the district.
Let's clarify that a little bit for our viewers. ECS stands for Education Cost Sharing, and basically that's the amount of money that the state will grant to towns to offset what the property taxpayers have to pay for their school system.
That's right. Basically, it's a formula. Every year, you know, the state kicks in per student a certain amount of money. And this year it was changed that we looked at how much towns were spending on their own over history and how much the state was spending, and we tried to come up with a mix. So now the town does not have to spend all of the ECS dollars, actually the education cost share dollars, on education. Some of that money, based on our history, is allowed to go to the taxpayers. And this all kind of came about because the governor, as you probably know, came across with this huge tax increase in February, and basically wanted to have a historic investment in education. And so while I was, always for increasing ECS, I didn't necessarily embrace her tax increase proposals.
That was her proposal to increase, I think it was a 0.5%?
5%.
5% increase across the board, right?
Across the board.
Right.
So, as that worked its way through the legislature, the Democrats came up with a proposal of a more progressive income tax, whereas people in Bethel would not pay any kind of increase and would actually get a tax cut. I supported the proposal for everybody in Bethel, basically, to get a tax cut and have a more progressive tax, which would still infuse money into education and into property tax relief. And what we ended up at the end of the day, we came back and they compromised, and in our special session, we basically did not change the tax structure here in the state of Connecticut at all, but we're able to use the surplus that we have, which is about $800 million, and we're using that money, and hopefully that money going forward, to increase ECS. So in Bethel, it ended up being about $750,000 in additional monies. So Bethel's local leaders will have to make a decision as to how they're going to use that new infusion of cash, of which I advocated for our town.
Thank you.
And see how they want to use that, because it all doesn't have to go to education. A large share of it, probably around 70% of that, needs to go to education. The other can go to property tax relief. So I think going forward, we can hopefully continue in this direction so that we take the burden off the middle-class taxpayer, and that's what I ran on. I know you and I have talked about it. You're on the Board of Education and chairman. So this is where we need to go as a state. My only concern is I just want to make sure that this is a sustained investment, so that, going forward 2-3 years from now, the legislature is not looking to, raise people's taxes to continue to do this. So it's some balance. There was some compromise, and I think it ended up being a very good budget. Certainly ended up being excellent for our education supporters and for our kids that are going to receive these dollars. So.
Well, that was a good transition. Anything else you want to cover on education, as long as we kind of segued into that area?
The other part about education, I'm very active on the committee, and my number one philosophy and my number one kind of goal on the committee is to bring accountability to all these dollars spent. We spent a lot of dollars on education, and specifically huge dollars for the urban centers, which I don't necessarily have a problem with. What I have a problem with is spending good money after bad. And so I've been a real strong advocate in terms of getting results-based accountability for those dollars. And hopefully we're going to continue to see more of that. We talked about high school graduation exam. We've talked about getting strategic plans. We talked about Saturday classes. So whatever we do, I just think that going forward, we need accountability for these dollars. We have a new Commissioner of Education now, and I look forward to seeing what kinds of proposals he's going to bring about. So next session, I think there's going to be a lot more focus on that. One of the things that I was urgently advocated for, and kind of withheld some votes until we got it, and that is to track kids. So for example, Bethel's scores and the way that we evaluate our kids in Bethel,
the CMTs and all that.
Right.
Yeah.
They may have just moved from Danbury or just moved from out of state.
Oh, right. That's one of the big problems with the method of testing.
That's right. And I think Bethel gets a lot of those kids. And we're not able to tell, well, were they educated here in Bethel or were they educated somewhere else? And one of the things that we put into place this session is to be able to follow the child, through the secondary education that he receives. So we can now, going forward, start breaking down kids that were educated in Bethel and what those scores are, and kids that were educated elsewhere, what those scores are when they get here and then as they advance. And that way we can make decisions, and you as Board of Ed people and our administrators and our teachers can make decisions based on getting a better sense of what's happening. So I think that's something that I'm pretty proud of that we did achieve this session.
Do you know where we rank in terms of other states? We might be the first one to do something like that.
Actually, we're not.
We're not?
A lot of other states do that. We're a little bit behind the 8 ball.
Well, one of the frustrations
That's one of the reasons why we kind of demanded that it happen.
Well, congratulations on that one. One of the big frustrations has been if we are required by law to test, say, 4th graders every year, you're always testing a different group of kids, so therefore you can't compare the scores. So this will be very key for school districts around the state to bring that accountability to their spending and look at their overall results.
Right.
Excellent work.
Thanks.
Well, in the process of doing all this stuff, you also had to be involved in the budgeting process. You're on that committee as well.
The finance, right.
Finance committee, and there was a lot of controversy this year, a lot of noise coming from Hartford. Tell us a little bit about the budget process and how it turned out in the end.
Well, it started with, as I said, the governor kind of surprised both the Republicans and the Democrats with their proposal because it was, you know, we had a surplus. We knew we were going to have a surplus. We didn't know how big, and she wanted to increase taxes. So that kind of blew everybody away, and the Republicans in the legislature really walked away from her plan. And I think the Democrats had some problems with it as well, in that you're doing an across-the-board tax increase. Mm-hmm. So we wanted to help the middle class, and I think that the great majority of the 2nd district is basically middle class working people. Mm-hmm. And so I was pretty much in tune with that and aligned with that, and so we just wanted some progressivity to our tax structure here in the state, but that really didn't happen. There's really 2 reasons why we wanted it. 1, we wanted education money. Mm-hmm. 2, we wanted to do something on health care. Mm-hmm. Our providers, Danbury Hospital has $60 million in uncompensated care. Dentists have not received an increase in what they've been paid in 15 years by the government. And providers have gotten very minimal increases. Ability Beyond Disability has gotten any increases, and they service all kinds of clients in Greater Danbury. So that was a priority. And then we had other priorities. We wanted to do something on the environment, open space money, and just a number of things that we've been neglecting. And so we had a whole set of spending priorities, education and health care, and the governor had education as a priority, and House Republicans didn't want to do, they just didn't want to spend money, they didn't want to raise taxes, they didn't really have a priority. I don't know what
they didn't want to do either one, right? Okay.
But they wanted to do some education, they said, but they were not on board with health care at all. So basically we had to go to special session because we could not come to an agreement with the governor. And everybody had to give something. And we did end up with a significant investment for health care. The kids is what we want to cover. As Democrats, I think that everybody can agree that all kids should be insured. Pregnant mothers should have insurance so that when they have the baby is a healthy baby. So that was number one. So that is now enforced, and that was not the case. And we also increase and are going to expand our whole Husky program so that all kids will have insurance. So, and we also want to deal with uncompensated care so that providers are now, all in the system, and folks aren't coming from, Bridgeport or out of state using Danbury Hospital, that they, can use the hospitals and the providers in their area. So that was something that I think that we addressed. As well as helping out the taxpayer of Bethel by infusing money into education. So, it was a compromise. I was up till 5 in the morning reading bills. I was a little uncomfortable by that and a little taken aback by that whole process, but that's what I got elected to do, and I tried to read the bills as fast as I could, and I think it ended up being a pretty good product.
Well, I give you credit for reading the bills, because we know in Washington, we're not entirely sure they do read them before they vote on them. So,
well, I have new sympathy for it, because now having done it, you're asked to do some things, and it's not easy. Mm-hmm. It really isn't easy, and even when you have time to read the bills and you pull them down, people have ways of writing things, and you have to really. To tell you the truth, I was in a great row of legislators. There were 2 other freshmen, and then we had some veterans. And we actually took turns, you know, going over different sections and finding what we call rats, which are, you know, little earmarks. They call them earmarks in D.C. We call them rats here in the state. And they're little favors for different people. So we, you know, we all took turns, and we are all kind of specialists in different areas so we could help each other out. And, you know, we killed some things, too.
You killed some rats.
Yeah, we killed some rats. Part of it is not only advocating for your district, but making sure that bad legislation doesn't get through. So it was kind of fun to make sure that we, you know, we could kill a few things too. So that was good.
Great. Well, on the topic of health care, you mentioned the Husky program. Why don't you explain that a little bit, because that's an interesting...
Well, the Husky program basically, and I had some folks in Bethel write me about the Husky program and talk about the fact that, you know, basically it's the working poor that cannot, or they may be working for a small business that cannot provide insurance. And so the state of Connecticut, with the help of the federal government, we get reimbursed by the federal government. We have a program that makes sure that kids are having access to health care. And the problem with it has always been that you'd have to go maybe 40 minutes to get a doctor, and they're basically Medicaid rates, and so it's about 30 to 40% less than what a private insurer would pay. So on our state's insurance, for example, you know, they may pay $100 for a service, but on the Medicaid program they may pay $60, so the doctor's losing 40 bucks. And so after a while, you know, doctors don't want to participate because they're all about making money and paying their bills, and they have a payroll too, and so they don't participate. And so what we did was we increased our reimbursement to bring it in line, closer in line, not quite, but closer in line with what private insurers are paying, so that we can get a greater pool of dentists, of pediatricians, and of specialists, and also to take care of our hospitals. I mean, St. Mary's is about ready to go under in Waterbury. You know, Danbury Hospital, I mentioned, loses $60 million a year in uncompensated care. So it's intended to do that, because what happens is we cost shift to the private guy. So your insurance goes up, and mine goes up as a small business person, and our rates continue to go up to pay for that uncompensated
For that
care.
$60 million gap.
Right.
Because somebody has to cover that.
Exactly. Somebody's got to pay for it. And, you know, so those of us on private insurance, we end up paying for it. So the state is saying, okay, let us start to do our share and pay reasonable rates so that, you know, we can try to contain costs across the board. So that was a huge piece of trying to do something about health care in the state of Connecticut. I did vote against the pooling bills. The pooling bills were universal access bills, so it meant that there would be one. I voted against one bill, and I took a lot of heat for it, but I don't believe that everybody in the state of Connecticut should have one insurance carrier, and we should all be in the same insurance carrier. So I voted against that. I don't think that's the direction that we should go. I think knowing Husky and knowing how the state has run health care, I'm definitely afraid of the state of Connecticut running health care for everybody. And so that's not the reform that I advocate for. I want everyone to have coverage. I want the working poor to have coverage. I want the poor to have coverage. I want the rich to have coverage. I want everybody to have access to quality care. But I don't think we should all be on. I think competition is good. And so we need to come up with reforms that bring about universality without driving up costs, contain costs, but not everybody be on one government plan. So those were the kinds of concepts that I supported this session, and that will be the battle as we go forward, is how are we going to get everybody to have health insurance without going to one plan? And I think that's the challenge. I think we started at this session by getting all the kids covered and putting the money in to deal with uncompensated care, and then we have to deal with structural issues as we go forward.
Let's talk a little bit about the environment, because another one of your favorite topics.
Two things I think that happened that were great this session. One, we came up with an electronic recycling bill. We did not do the bottle bill, so that died, but we did do an electronic recycling bill. So all the old computers and, I don't know, iPods will probably be thrown out in 6 months. There'll be something else will be there.
Old cell phones.
All that stuff. So the state of Connecticut will have a universal program in about a year from now so that we can collect all that and it'll be recycled appropriately. So that was one that I'm very proud of. And the second thing that I'm very proud of is the open space money was increased. So, we're talking about $100 million going now towards open space going forward so that we can continue to save our land and preserve it and have conservation. And in particularly, bonding money, which I was very concerned for Bethel. There's been a little bit of brouhaha locally here on monies, but I can't remember any state rep in the last 10, 15, 20 years that has brought back significant dollars in bond monies to Bethel. And in my first session, I'm very proud to say that we passed a bonding bill through committees that brought $2 million back to Bethel. And that was through my initiative. We set it up for purchase of open space. And originally, I was trying to support the proposal to buy the Shriver property, Bogus Farm, and the whole pieces of land that are contiguous to Huntington Park. I sat down with Gina McCarthy, the Commissioner of Environment, and then with her staff, and tried to make sure that this sale went through and that the state of Connecticut came in and bought it. And what happened was that they did an appraisal. They did two, actually, which were market appraisals, and the state of Connecticut offered less than what the seller wanted to accept. So when that died, I immediately went to the speaker and said, I need to change this bond package from what we had intended for the purchase of the land contiguous to Huntington Park, and I'd like to use that same money to purchase, to facilitate the purchase of Terre Haute, Bethel selling to Danbury, so that Bethel would still get $2 million. And he signed on to that, and that's where we stand right now.
So that issue is pending at this point?
The issue is pending. I spoke to former town council here in Bethel. I spoke to Alice Hutchinson, a former first selectman, and we talked about the property which is in Danbury, which is about 200 acres. It's only 200 acres of the Terre Haute. We have like 600 and something. So it's the property that Bethel owns in Danbury already. So it's within their boundaries. And there was an appraisal done on those 200 acres. It was about $2 million plus. And so, I think it's a win-win proposal. We get open space conservation easement on those 200 acres, so Bethel wins. Because we protect our watershed, okay, all the water that's coming into Bethel and Reading. We have some real pristine watersheds up there, so we're protecting our watershed. We're getting open space. We're allowing the Ives Trail to go through, so everybody in Bethel and Danbury has recreation.
This is the hiking trail that's been proposed to cut all the way through the area,
which Bethel has not approved.
Right.
Okay, and we get $2 million. And what can we do with the $2 million? We can start up our own fund, open space fund, a conservation fund, to now perhaps we could buy, Blue Jay Orchards, if that's on the market again, Caballeros Grove. There was land across from the town hall that CVS built on, which, I have a hard time seeing CVS over there. But, that was money that we said we couldn't buy because we didn't have the money. So it gives us $2 million to go out and buy other properties that are important to the town of Bethel that we want to preserve. And that's the beauty of the proposal. So you get open space because it's state money, so nobody can touch it. So we still have open space there, yet we're $2 million richer. And I think the taxpayers would appreciate $2 million. And so that's what I've been advocating for. We're going to go back in session in the middle of July and hopefully bring about that. And I look forward to working with the two municipalities to execute that deal.
Excellent. Let's talk a little bit about what is coming up in your second session, seeing as how you've been so busy this time. I heard an interesting theme when we were talking about health care and education. You used a phrase twice. I think it was making the state pay their fair share to give the taxpayers a relief. Is that your theme coming up next?
Well, we won't be dealing with budgetary issues actually in the second session because we have a biennium budget. But I think, you know, for as long as I'm there, I'm going to look at my district and see middle-class working folks that want tax relief. And so property tax relief and controlling healthcare costs is going to be a continual theme of mine, so yes. But I encourage folks, you know, for the next session to email me, let me know if they have any ideas and what things need to happen. I got a lot of ideas from constituents in the 2nd District. At the very end of the session, you know, somebody called me up and asked me to do something about hit and runs. And said, you know, the hit and run...
Vehicular hit and runs?
Right. If you hit somebody or you get in an accident and you leave the scene, I think if you get arrested for that, you get a warrant for that, you lose your license for like 2 months. Ooh. And I looked it up. And it's like so lenient. And I said, oh, that's a good idea. I can propose that legislation. I had constituents in Bethel and Greater Danbury approach me on Lyme disease. I had a Lyme disease bill up there. I was going to bring it out as an amendment to a bill because the chair of health killed it. So, you know, I threatened to bring it out, and I got 50 co-sponsors, and, you know, I tied it up on all these bills. It was all filed as an amendment. And I went to the chair and I said, you know, what are you going to give me if I don't bring this out? So what she's going to give me is comprehensive legislation on Lyme disease next session.
Excellent.
She's doing a working task force, and we're going to do a public forum. So sometimes, you know, you have to be active, but you pull back and try to get a compromise. So I'll be working on that. And there's a number of other, you know, bills. There may be a bond package next year, so I'll be looking for trying to help Bethel on that. I am looking presently right now to get some additional monies, quite frankly, for the library. We're not able to get money directly for the library, but there's a parking lot there, and there's some other ways of maybe being creative to try to bring home a little bit of pork for Bethel, so I'll be kind of looking at that.
Excellent. Well, Jason, amazingly enough, we're out of time. Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining me. You've been watching an interview with Jason Bartlett, who is the state representative for the 2nd District, Bethel, Danbury, and Reading. Again, thank you.
Thanks.
We are sponsored by the Bethel Democratic Town Committee, and thank you again for watching, everyone. See you next time.